What's up, everybody? I'm John Middlekauff. You know what I need you to do. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. We got content for days reacting to every NFL game all the time, every single day. Subscribe, like the videos. Let's go. Welcome to another episode of 3 for the Money. All these lines presented by my friends at DraftKings. I'm gonna need to gamble because we're getting this place called Tom's Thumb. We didn't travel back to Northern California, so we're just hanging out here. Pretty low key. We ordered Thanksgiving meal because it's going to be the two of us from this place called Tom's Thumb, which is Guy Fieri did one of his diners, diners, drive-ins, and dives there. It's basically a gas station, which is an incredible barbecue joint. And then we saw on Instagram that they also do catered Thanksgiving, where you can basically go pick it up for like 2 to 4 people. And I'm like, shit, let's do that. So we're doing that. I'm gonna get, just eat an unhealthy amount of food because that is just kind of what you do on Thanksgiving. Maybe order some pie. I'm not a huge pie guy. Like I've never liked pumpkin pie. With this meal, you had the choice of pumpkin pie or sweet potato pie. I hate pumpkin pie. I just went with sweet potato pie, partly because I've never had sweet potato pie, and the lady on the phone said actually it's pretty good. People like it, so I'm like, let's get it. But I don't venture that far when it comes to desserts. Ice cream, chocolate cake. I don't get too crazy. But I guess sometimes on Thanksgiving you gotta deal with the hand that you're dealt. So maybe we'll order a separate pie from somewhere else. But I'm very excited to eat a lot of food and watch a lot of football, even if these games aren't great. And Tom Brady's, learning a lesson that this $37 million contract is going to force you to call the afternoon game, which is always going to be in Dallas. So you better pray that the Dallas Cowboys are good, because if they're not, your Thanksgiving's going to be ruined by Cooper Rush. But the morning starts with the Lions, and they are a 10-point favorite at home against the Matt Eberflus-led Chicago Bears. And I was thinking last Thanksgiving, we had my family actually all came to Arizona. And I remember having the game on. And remember at the time, Jordan Love's season had been pretty up and down, more down than up. And in that first half, he was remarkable. And they were up, I think, 23-6 at half. And I remember thinking, didn't the Lions lose 40-10 last Thanksgiving? And I looked, and the final score was 29-22. Now, the Packers scored 8 points, or excuse me, the Lions scored 8 points in the fourth quarter to make that score a little closer. But I think if you ask most people what happened last year to the Lions on Thanksgiving, is they got their ass kicked. I think we would agree on that. And here's the thing about the Lions, right? They've always got a Thanksgiving Day game. And it was always kind of their Super Bowl because their teams usually sucked. So it was really the one time a year, if you're not a Lions fan, that you're kind of forced to watch them start to finish. Because for a lot of the last 20 plus years, they weren't playing Monday night games. They weren't playing primetime games. That was their big moment for a team that typically wasn't that good. And then they finally get good, and they host the game against the Packers, who Aaron Rodgers is now gone, and they get killed. So to me, playing the Lions, who are clearly better this year, well, it's the Bears, not the Packers. I think that they are going to try to be like what happened to us last year on Thanksgiving. Fuck that. We are not allowing that to happen again. I would, regardless who they were playing, I wouldn't want to be in this spot playing Detroit in Detroit after last season. I can't even imagine how many times Dan Campbell brought up the egg that they laid last year on Thanksgiving, which now, there's substance behind them playing. By far, of the 6 teams playing, they are clearly the best. There's a gap between them and the Packers. I mean, hell, we just saw the Lions went on the road in Green Bay in a rainstorm and kicked their ass. So I would not want to be Chicago. Now, on the bright side, I'd be tempted to lay the 10 points for the Lions, but the Bears, once they fired Shane Waldron, are actually playing pretty well. 2 weeks ago, they lost 20-19, all because a field goal got blocked. Now, granted, a field goal got blocked the exact same way the following week, which cost them in a game that they lost by 3 points in overtime. But again, they were just in overtime. So back-to-back weeks against an 8-3 team and a 9-2 team, they easily could have won both games. Now, I would say they had a much better chance of winning the Packer game, given that they were up in that, than the Minnesota game that they needed to recover an onside kick. But still, like, it was very admirable the way they have played. And their quarterback looks a lot better. Their offensive weapons look a lot better. DJ Moore looks a lot better. Uh, so I could not bet on Matt Eberflus. I refuse to do it. And ultimately, I think if they lose this game, especially if the Lions cover, Eberflus has getting fired Friday or Saturday written all over it. Make Thomas Brown the interim coach. Give him like a trial run. The Bears have lost 5 straight games. 5 straight games. Now, I would say there's a clear line between the moment they fired Waldron, like the games they were losing to Arizona and New England. They have looked like a different team the last couple of weeks because their offense has been, I would say, more than credible. And Caleb Williams has looked like a number one pick. But I don't know, man. I have a hard time. This is going to be a stay away for me because the only place I could go would be the Lions. I just can't trust Eberflus. But you got to take the Bears getting 10 points, given the way they played the last 2 weeks. Pretty solid, though, morning game. The next game, which I would say looked pretty questionable on paper 6 months ago, looks dramatically worse as we sit here on Tuesday afternoon. Tom Brady might be on an island and have to entertain us for 3 hours in a final score that could be like, I don't know, 18-10 written all over it. Cooper Rush against Tommy DeVito, who's injured, could be Drew Lock. I actually think if Drew Lock plays, that'd be somewhat of like if you're the Cowboys, you would rather play DeVito than Drew Lock. But this is why, like, to me, the story of this game is just simply Tom Brady. You know, he's trying. He really is. I think Dan Patrick summed it up pretty well. Sometime in the last, I don't know, couple months, I saw a clip of him on the internet. Like, it's not Tom Brady's fault that he doesn't know what good TV is. How would he? He was paid $350 million because of his name, because of the brand. He's not a TV guy. Tom Brady was a football player. Like, when you watch Joe Buck and Troy Aikman, it's like, those guys are TV guys. They've been doing TV now. I mean, Joe Buck for his entire life. And Troy has been a full-time right-hand analyst for over 20 years. Even, Tony Romo was just his personality just was a pretty easy transition. It had a happier Gruden meets Madden type feel. And it was easy to see why he excelled. Collinsworth is just a television star. Those guys can just kind of entertain. And I'm interested to see. I just watched Tom call the Packer Niner game. It's been rough. And I don't blame him. It's not like they gave him this spotlight. Obviously, what was he going to do? Turn down $350 million to call NFL football games when he can fly day of the game or day before the game on a private jet? It's a pretty fucking good gig if you can get it. But it could be rough. So buckle up. Have a stiff cocktail, depending on where you live, right around kickoff. Now, I would say the game of the day clearly is the night game. And for the most part, it feels like, because the Cowboy and Lions game, depending on the year, can be very hit or miss. Adding this third game, which it feels like they've been doing for a decade plus, but in recent memory, we have got good matchups. And at the start of the year, you went, hey, the Dolphins have been to back-to-back playoffs, and the Green Bay Packers are one of the best organizations in football. So, like it. Looked a little weird when Tua got hurt, but since he's come back, they've won 3 straight games. And it's just a very intriguing matchup. Here's the problem. It is freezing cold in Green Bay. Decent chance that the game is in the teens, and it could be snowing on Thursday night. I looked at some stats on Tua Tagovailoa. One, the Dolphins in general have not been very good on primetime in like their last 12 games. That game against the Rams helped their record out a lot because going into that game, they were 2-11 they were 2-8 in their last 10 games. After winning that game, they went to 3-9. So, or excuse me, they were 2-9. My math is John. Did you go to college? Did you listen in high school? The answer is kinda and no, not really. But coming into the Rams game, they were 2-9 in their last 11 primetime games. Winning that game got them to 3-9. So they have not been great in bright light spots. But where they are really terrible, and this to me is a direct reflection of Tua, who actually has looked good these last couple weeks. He's looked like a really good quarterback. Looked like a top 10 quarterback in the NFL. He has been atrocious in cold games. And there's a difference in cold games, right? Like that Chiefs game was frigid. It was like negative wind chills. I'm just talking games under 40 degrees. Under 40 degrees, Tua has not won a game in his last 7 attempts. He is 0-7 in 40-degree or under games. And it's understandable. Doesn't have a great arm. His game doesn't really translate to freezing cold temperatures. And then you factor in the franchise, they play in tropical weather. It's fucking gorgeous. I just a couple days ago, what was that? Last Friday. Last Friday, Saturday, I played golf with a guy that lives in Miami. I was like, "What was the weather?" He's like, "Played golf yesterday. It was gorgeous, like 80 degrees, no humidity, beautiful. This is why, you know, these 6 months in Miami are hard to beat." I'm like, yeah, same thing here. How do you relate to going in that weather? It's why I like Seattle last week. It's like Arizona, their last two big wins against the Jets and the Bears have been in Scottsdale or in Glendale in a controlled environment. Then you got to go to Seattle in late November where the weather it can be cold, windy, and wet. It's a tough transition. And what happened to Arizona? They look terrible on offense. And Kyler is much more physically gifted with arm strength than Tua. Now, this is Packers minus 3.5. That extra half point, it's a little nervous, but I have a simple philosophy. Like, I will bet against the Jets. I will just bet against the Jets. Who are the Jets playing this weekend? I will bet against them. I'll do the same thing with the Miami Dolphins when they play in cold weather, as long as Tua is their quarterback. Now, what's weird about the Dolphins is, their defense under Mike McDaniel has been more than questionable. The last 3 weeks, now granted, they have played the Raiders and they played the Patriots last week. They have held teams under 20 points. They played the Rams. They have been playing very, very good defense. I just think this is a mismatch. Like to me, this has like, I don't know, 27-10 written all over it. And just a physical, like we're used to playing in this, practicing it, and living in it. You're just not. So I like the Dolphins.